Were able to catch him? You want me to have the- Should be able to find a couple of these. Yeah. That was some more. We'd like to welcome everyone here tonight and call this meeting to order. We'll start out with a pledge of allegiance or an invocation from Scott Kirkland and a pledge of allegiance from Rondo Felberg. And Chris, these are friends of Chris Kilpack. He asked them to come. And so if you'd like to say a little bit about them.
Thank you, Mayor. These are two of my wonderful neighbors, next door neighbor and just up the street, and just great citizens of Orem, and have been here and represented what good citizens are and do. So thank you very much for coming tonight, helping.
Thank you.
Our dear Father in heaven, we are so grateful today for the many, many blessings that we enjoy each and every day. Grateful to live in this great city of Orem, Utah. Grateful for those that lead us. Grateful, Father, for the efforts that they put forth to guide this city to goodness and to joy and happiness for those of us that live in the city. We're grateful for the opportunity to live in this free land that we enjoy so much, and for the opportunity to have freedoms, Father. We pray tonight that thou wilt bless those involved in the meeting, that the discussions will be forthright and be guided by the Spirit, and that together as a body, the council may know good policies and good ideas and be able to act accordingly. And we bless for that Spirit, to pray for that Spirit to be with us this night, and do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next up, moving to item number 6, we've got a presentation on the Hillcrest video tour. Bryce, our library and rec director, is going to present that.
Mayor and Council, thank you for the opportunity to be with y'all this evening. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes as Pete prepares a video that was filmed yesterday. Our Hillcrest Park has been open since November. The Hillcrest Center, the old Hillcrest Elementary School, is nearing the completion of its transformation into an incredible resource for our city, for our recreation programs and for our residents. And Lane Gray, our project manager, and I had the chance to do sort of a walking video tour yesterday that we'd like to share a little bit with y'all.
All right, so what we've got here as far as a quick update, we've got AK Concrete. They poured 12 yards of concrete this morning. So you can see that the exterior of the building has been painted with the exception of the west side, of which we can walk over there in a few minutes. So let's go ahead and just kind of walk into the building if you'd like. So this door we're entering now goes right into the classroom.
We're excited. This classroom here will be used for a lot of our preschool programming. We'll have an opportunity to do some of our after-school programs like Snapology, our magic classes. In the evening, we'll have some community programs, community meetings, a resource for the neighborhood so that they'll be able to come and just have a space right here close.
Going out into the hallway here, into the gymnasium. This gymnasium is beautiful in my opinion. Well, you've got a full-length basketball court going north-south here. You've got a full-length volleyball court and 3 pickleball courts. So keep it within the lines, I would say. Depends on what sport you're after. It's all right here. As we walk this way, we're headed into the family room area. Got a nice counter spot right in here so individuals can come in, get their snacks at the concession stand, come over here.
So a couple of the TVs will be used for video game systems, and so we're really hoping that this can be a place, again, teens, neighborhood, they can come over after school, and so we'll have open hours most afternoons, I think 4 to 9 o'clock, that they can just come and be here. And we just want a place for people in the neighborhood or people that are here for an activity to come and just hang out for a bit without having to have, there's no membership, there's no anything, they can just come and be here.
Where this gentleman here is walking, that's the patio area. You can see that structure where there'll be some lights that will be affixed to that structure hanging across. All kinds of furniture in here. Right in this area right here will be the 2 table tennis tables right here. Then you can see in the background there those blue poles, that is the 9 square. And then out here farther to the northeast, you can see where the pickleball courts are located. And as soon as we get some good temperatures, we'll be able to paint those courts. We were excited back in October, I think it was, when we opened up phase 1 over there at the play area. And to be honest with you, I've been over here to this project nearly every day since this project, or since phase 1 is opened. And you can see that there's cars lined up in the parking lot there. It's already being well used, even in the winter months. And so you can just imagine as the weather gets better, how much more use there will be. And then you bring in the splash pad and the pickleball. This is going to be a busy little place.
No, I think it's the same thought. I think you've seen the use of the initial playground, and then you add in the 12 pickleball courts, and then each of these other things we've seen, where it's at in sort of relation to our other really big parks in Lakeside or Nielsen's, the Sierra, and I think this is just going to really add something to this side of the city, and something that we'll be able to program and use in an organized way, but then also just so much space for families, residents to just come on their own and find something to do. I love that it's a 12-month-a-year park. We have a lot of wonderful parks that are great 9 months a year. I think this one really is a 12-month-a-year park. I think that's exciting to think about just from a programming perspective, but also from a resident perspective.
Yeah. Well, we're looking to open up the gymnasium area and so forth. Kind of a little soft start, if you will, for the building itself. March 9th, turn that over to Bryce and his personnel so that they can start programming some of the basketball, volleyball, what have you in there. We're looking at probably having this thing fully operational by April 1 at least, I would think. It's coming together. Fun project.
So we're just beyond excited about the status of the project, that we've been able to get this done and get it completed so quickly. Our partners at Bud Mahas, Blue Line Design, WP Architecture have done a great job managing the project with us. And of course, this is one of my favorite examples in my time here with the city of the care tax at work. This is just such a unique project. It provides an incredible resource. It's incredibly fun to think about the new things it's going to add. And I just get really excited. So like Lane mentioned, we'll be in the gyms in 2.5 weeks, the week of March 9th. We think the rest of the park will be, maybe I'll temper Lane's expectation. Hopefully in April, we'll be ready to go. And then we're looking to get on a council work session. I think the second week of May, we'd love to have you all out there as we celebrate the splash pad turning on for the first time and be out there with some of our residents. So again, grateful for y'all's support and direction in this project. And we're excited to get back out there soon.
Well, thank you, Bryce. And we're very excited about this project, to have a world-class park here in Orem. And you're always there wherever the really good things happen. So we appreciate it.
On record, I have the best job in the city, so we'll take it.
Okay.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Yes, that is, yeah, as far as it's not on the agenda, and they switched my agenda. So, but I can put it back on the agenda. And it's not really an agenda item.
Well, it was in the work meeting.
It was in the work meeting.
Yeah.
And anyway, this was a really cool experience that Lene had last week. She'd like to share with us.
Yeah, I just wanted to give this to the mayor and city council, the other members who were not at the ribbon cutting for the opening of the OCD and anxiety centers, the one down by UVU. If you drive down University Parkway to the west, where it hits Geneva, you will see their sign. And it was amazing to go through. They had stations set up, 6 different stations where they talked about their therapy methods and the different classes that they offer, and had some just incredible statistics of ways that they help people with OCD and anxiety, up in the 60 and 70% success rate with very low recidivism, where if anybody has ever been in that world, you know that a lot of times a 30% success rate is to be applauded. But they have these unique and incredible opportunities. And I just wanted to present this to the rest of the city council and the mayor, and just say how grateful we are to have them in our community. So
Thank you, Lene.
put it back here on the table.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for all the efforts you do getting around the community to all these different types of events. We appreciate that. We'll move on to item number 7, personal appearances. And aligned with our short meeting tonight, we have one person on the agenda for personal appearances. And as long as you're going to say nice things, we'd like to welcome David Lee to come up.
He's not.
That was a short explanation of the whole thing I'm supposed to read.
Missed the last thing you said.
So are you here for the public hearing?
I'm here about the proposed shopping center that's going to go in at 519 South Geneva Road.
Okay. Okay,
And-
that's actually going to be a public hearing.
Okay.
And so what that means is just you don't have to sign up for it, but
Okay.
we'll open it up for public comment. And so that would be the time to come back up, which will be
Okay.
pretty dang soon.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've got item number 8, consent items, approval of meeting. The only thing on there is the approval. This is the shortest agenda I've ever seen, which is kind of nice. Approval of meeting minutes for February 13th, 2024. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent items?
I'll motion to approve consent items.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Aye.
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 The consent items are approved. Thank you. We'll move to item number 9, the scheduled items. And now we're back to a public hearing. I'll just read this. This is item 9.1, amending Article 22-5-3A and the zoning map of the city of Orem by rezoning the property indicated or located generally at 519 South Geneva Road from the R20 zone to the C2 zone, approximately 3.49 acres. And Jason, would you like to present that to us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So tonight, the applicant is before you to request a rezone of a portion of the property that you can see outlined in red. It's kind of hard to see the dotted dashed lines to the north, but those two properties, there's three properties there. The two parcels to the north are currently zone C2. The one outlined in solid red is what they're here tonight to rezone. It's currently R20. And what they're proposing is to rezone that to C2 so they can then do an overall cohesive shopping center at that location. It's been a nursery for I don't know how many years, but 40.
Yeah, it's been operated as a nursery since 1980, 43 years.
So it's been a commercial project under that zone, but they're here now. So R20 is residential, 20,000 square feet. Yep. Yep. So they're proposing to change that to C2 to match the properties that they own currently, like I say, to the north. The proposed center will include a 60,000 square foot grocery tenant, a 5,000 square foot bank, and then 4,000 and a 3,900 square foot fast food type venue. You can see to the south, the property is proposed, and with working with our engineering division, having if I can turn on my pointer. The access is as far south as they can. If you guys are familiar with the location of 4 South with the over on Geneva Road, that's a very busy intersection, so they wanted to get that as far south as possible. It does align with the parking lot across the street to the west, so that kind of reduces some of the conflict in the future with access onto Geneva Road. As part of the concept, now, of course, this is just a concept. This is not part of the approval tonight, just showing you what they're proposing. Trucks would come around, and you can see the dock area here, which would be shielded by the building from the residential properties along here. As part of the ordinance in a C2 zone, there is a 7-foot masonry wall that's required on that south side, and then parking lot landscaping as well. Elevations 34 feet, which would be right next to the residences with a 48.5-foot setback from the residence. So it's over the height of that quite a ways. You can see the different elevations of the proposed outbuildings as well. And of course, the existing facility. And here's an aerial view showing the area in green there that's proposed to be rezoned. Planning Commission did review this and did make a recommendation that the council approve the rezone. So I'll be glad to address any questions.
Can you just go back to the, back further? That one. I just want to get the context of that now that we see the aerial photo.
Is one loading dock enough for a grocery store?
The grocery store that we're proposing here would be a smaller footprint than many of the other ones that you see around town. Think more of a smaller Smith's or a Kent's, and not a super Walmart or a super Target.
Or a Macy's or a Harmon and 8th North?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know how big those are, so.
Yeah. We felt, based on our research and talking to some of the people in the industry, that a single loading dock, and there is room there if they needed to expand further in. It wouldn't take any more away from that corner. If they needed more, they would, there you go. Yeah, they could move that further into the interior of the store if they needed to widen that out at all. But we intentionally wanted to keep that block there on the south side of that grocery store for a visual and acoustic block to keep any noise, as much noise as possible from being transmitted through there across that wall into that residential area to the south.
So do you have a contract with an agreement?
We do
with the
not.
grocery store?
We have not approached any, we don't have any contracts or anything with any grocery stores at this time, or any developers. This is purely a concept plan that we came up with to get the C2 zoning for the entire property, a concept plan that we felt would fit in and serve the community in that area, both Vineyard and Orem well.
What about these other business pads? Do you have?
No, we do not
Contracts?
have contracts or anything committed with any other business for the bank or the fast food restaurants. No.
You could, I mean, you should totally plan for growth because, I mean, if you're right next to Vineyard, they don't have a grocery store.
Right.
You could knock it out of the park, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So Jason, I've got a question on the in and out. There's only one way in and one way out. So does that pencil with the number of parking stalls, everything? And
Yeah, the width and they have separate right, left turn out, right? So yeah. And John Dorney from our transportation is here, but as we got closer to the Fourth South, they have three access points now. If I can go to and UDOT, this is UDOT controlled facility. So there's an access here and two of them here. Well, there's another one right there as well. So the one will be across the street here. And that does reduce the conflicts as you get closer to this intersection. So one consolidated larger access to the south is probably more efficient and less congestive than having another one closer to that intersection. So one is sufficient, I guess, to answer your question.
okay, thank you.
So, but I thought you had to have two.
Not always. It depends on the number of parking stalls and access points. But if this is large enough to access with a different turning radius, then that one is sufficient. Typically, in projects that are bigger, we do like to see multiple accesses. But because of the proximity to this intersection, the fact that there's no access to the east or to the north, and it's a busy Geneva Road, there is limitation on what UDOT would allow as well. And they are happy to have two of them closed and focus on one access.
So do we not want one on Fourth South then?
No, it's too close to the railroad tracks and different things.
Okay, so that's the downside there. And then if you would go back to the picture of the building with the heights.
Height.
So typically, when you're backed up against residents' homes, we do a C3 zone for protection. There's more protections for those as far as setbacks and height restrictions. In this particular case, if we grant the C2, they could do a 1-to-1 height, couldn't they?
Equal to the height, yes, up to.
So how tall of a building could effectively be there if he can't get a grocery store, if this is not the plan?
C2 is a maximum, I believe, 48. I'd have to double check. I think it's 48 feet max.
So then you'd have a 48-foot tall building with the 48-foot setback.
Yes.
Next to the homes.
Yes.
And this is not for sure? Or I mean, what's the chance that you're going to actually be doing this site plan?
Right now, we are just focused on getting the zoning approval. Once we get this zoning approval, if we're successful this evening with the city council, at that point, we will start getting more serious about approaching developers and tenants and starting to nail this down. Our viewpoint, our long-range vision is we would not go with anything taller. We certainly don't have any desire we don't see the need to go with anything taller than what we have in this plan right here with this size of a grocery store.
So I guess, and let me just repeat back what I think you said. So you are cognizant of the homes.
Yes, very
and
cognizant, yeah.
I think the 34 feet is reasonable at the 48-foot setback, but anything higher than the 34 feet, I mean, I have some of that in my area. Anything higher than that is really ominous to those residents.
No, we are well aware of that, and we do want to be good neighbors to them. In addition to the 7-foot masonry wall that was previously mentioned, we are going to put a row of trees along that south wall, just inside that masonry wall. So we'll have not just the masonry wall, but greenery, trees along that wall as well to provide additional screening above the 7-foot wall. That will provide, again, additional screening for the residents along that northern edge of that property.
So Jason, if we approve this, are we are we set with that height or can it go up to
So,
48?
They'd be set to whatever the C2 zone requires. So tonight you're not approving this concept plan, nor are they tied to the concept plan. It's simply,
We're just changing the
this is what
zone.
they're proposing, but they could change it.
Is there any way to protect that from changing?
Yeah, what would the other zone allow height-wise that Lene mentioned?
C3, I think 35 is the base, but depending on how far you get away from the neighbors, you can go up to, now you're making me think about it, but I think it's 48 feet as well. We have to be 100 feet away from.
But it's the setback
Not a big
that controls
difference.
that. Well, but
Not
it's
a-
the
not a big
setback,
difference.
the setback effect, it's not a big difference, but the setback definitely makes a bigger difference.
Yeah, so I mean, development agreement would be one way to, tie them to a height or something like that. The zone, by rezoning it, you basically allow them to do whatever is within that zone. They could come back and propose, right? With equal to the height and different things like that.
Could we do a development agreement that kind of follows the C3 protections just along that one border of the 35 height maximum?
And that'd be something Steve would want to address.
Sorry, could you repeat your question then?
My question, so Jason said, our concern was the height, right? C2 allows up to 48, within 48 feet. And right now this looks acceptable. You've got a 48-foot setback, you've got a 34 height. So my question was, a C3 zone is typically what we have put in the past next to residents. That's the protection for homes, rather than having a ominous building right behind them. So my question is, Jason mentioned possibly a development agreement. Could we do some kind of development agreement where on this one border, that protection is of the 35-foot, the C3 parameters, 35 feet, 100 feet, or 35 feet with even this 48? I'd be fine with that too, if the residents seem in favor of that.
Yeah, I think you could do that, but it would have to go back to planning commission. So it'd have to go through that process.
So then how would we do that tonight if we want to do that?
Basically, if you want to, probably first you want to see if the owner developer here is willing to consider that, obviously. And if they are, then perhaps you would just make a motion asking that we do that development agreement like you've proposed and send it back to the planning commission for them to hold the necessary public hearing on that. And then it would come back to you after planning commission hears it.
So, because basically we like this plan, we just want to make sure that doesn't change next to the neighborhood, because protecting the neighborhood would be the major issue.
Right. Because right now, there's no guarantee that they will do this plan. I mean, that's their intent right now. But if you rezone it to C2, then they could do anything that's permitted in the C2 zone.
Right. And I'm fine with commercial being there. I just want that neighborhood protected.
We're willing to agree to that stipulation.
Okay.
So could we make a motion to that effect? That we approve it to be a C2 zone with the understanding it would be X feet? Can we do that, Steve, or not?
No, it would need to, like I said, we would need to have a development agreement and we would have to send that back to the planning commission to consider the rezone with the development agreement. And then it would come back to you to make a final decision after that.
So that'd be in another month. Are you under time constraint?
From our perspective, the sooner the better. But
So it'd be a month, right? Because they'd have to hear the planning commission and then come back to us.
Yeah. It would be a month, but you would have we're saying we're fine with that. So you technically could go forward. You wouldn't have it official, but
okay.
So
We're not saying we're fine with it until we hear the public hearing, right?
that's right. We're not fine with it. Until we
Jason,
do the
could you go
public
back to the height? Could you go back to the height? Because the front, so it's 41
So
just on the top.
entry.
So it's 34 feet.
Entry facade is 41, but the actual height next to a residential would be 34.
Any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and open this up for the public hearing part of this. So the gentleman who was here earlier, if you had something to say, feel free to come up.
Yeah, I actually live 3 houses down from Geneva on that side, that south side of the proposed site, and I was just concerned about the potential noise in the evening, late at night. It looks like that roadway is going to go right along where the houses are. And I presume that's going to be probably large trucks that are going to be bringing things into the store there. And I was just concerned about if that 7-foot wall is high enough. I know when you get a shopping center, you've got all kinds of people that roam around in those places at all kinds of times and hours of the night. And I just want to make sure that me and my neighbors are all safe and secure back there and don't have people trying to jump over the wall and getting into our backyards and that sort of thing. So that was one of my major concerns. And so if you can elaborate any more on what's going on here, I'd appreciate it.
Jason, do you have any thoughts on those concerns?
So they could build up to an 8-foot fence. The council can, through a fence modification, go higher if, the council determines that something higher is more appropriate than a 7-foot masonry wall. That is an option the council can do through that process.
Sorry, we can go higher than 7?
You could, through a what's called a fence modification process. We could bring that through if the council decides, a 9-foot fence is better and the neighbors are good with that, then that is an option through a process where the council makes that determination. Typical ordinance requires a 7-foot masonry. That's the standard. And I believe, and the applicant can justify, but I'm sure the deliveries, there may be some in the mornings or midnight, but I'm sure they come in the mornings and during the day and not, 2 in the morning, hopefully, but.
Yeah. Again, our intention, we looked at ways to minimize the impact, both noise and visual on the neighborhood around that, specifically to the south. And that led to the layout that we have here. The fast food restaurants will be open later than either the bank or the grocery store. And so as a result, we put those all the way up as far into the north side of the property as we possibly could. The 7-foot fence was, as mentioned in the code. If we go much higher than that, we run into the risk, at least from our perspective, if I was a homeowner there and I've got a 9 or a 10-foot brick wall in my backyard, tends to, I don't know, it may cause some visual problems in and of itself if I've got too high of a brick wall in my backyard. The trees, we think, will also help with that as well. So we did explore some ways to mitigate some of the visual and auditory impacts on the neighborhood to the south. If the council wants us to make the wall higher, we can certainly do that. That's not a problem. We feel like we've done, or we have attempted to take some of those residents' concerns into account with this.
What were the concerns at the neighborhood meeting?
It was the noise and light levels. So light levels late at night from the parking lots, and the noise from the parking lot and from the fast food restaurants were the concerns that were brought up at the neighborhood meeting.
Do the lights affect the neighborhood much from the way the angles and everything work, or?
I don't think so. If we go with the newer, the LED lights that are very much focused downward instead of the older styles that go out, I think we can really mitigate the impact that the parking lot lights will have on the surrounding neighborhoods with the newer technologies that are out there.
Yeah, that's what we've seen on some of our projects, that those types of lights make a big difference.
Yeah.
As far as that is an issue, as far as a 7-foot fence versus a 9-foot fence, or any thoughts on that in terms, they both have their pros and cons. Tom?
Jason, when Harmon's went in, which is near my neighborhood, some neighbors were concerned, but if you tried to shut that down, they would string you up today. Can you give me some idea of what the height of the fence is around Harmon's with the neighbors? And they have more trucks coming in.
Yeah, Harmon's, I think, is 7 feet. They have a 10-foot landscape strip between the fence and the parking lot or the drive aisle. And that was specifically designed at the time when Harmon's was built to have that buffer between that, which is similar to what these guys are proposing. So there is a 7-foot wall and a 10-foot buffer with trees and different things, which seems to, I not familiar with any complaints in the last, many years with Harmons.
And a new neighborhood went in there 2 or 3 years ago to the whichever direction, to the east of it.
Yep, yep.
And
Not an issue.
not an issue.
Yeah.
And the lighting, et cetera. I haven't heard any of those complaints
So
either.
the lighting itself depends on how it's designed, like the applicant indicated, but we do require them to be either shielded if it's a light that can't be, directed from the neighbors, that needs to be shielded, and typically directed down or away from the neighbors. And that's part of current ordinance. So we don't allow direct glare or direct light into a residential zone from a commercial development. So those protections are built in currently.
So, Jeff, you had a question?
Yeah, Mr. Lee, thank you for coming and sharing your concerns this evening. So the 7 foot or 8 foot or 9 foot fence, whatever that ends up being, is there something special about these fences that helps mitigate noise? Does it have some kind of a sound absorption property, or just the fact that it's there as a barrier?
It's a solid masonry wall, so it has to
Okay.
be solid. So it's not a chain link or, wrought iron. It's
It's
a,
not a vinyl.
solid, could be a tilt up, it could be a stand in place, but it is a thick, solid, and it does have some noise barrier like you see on I-15. Obviously, they're not that tall, but it does allow sound to bounce off and
That
stay in
blocks
their
the sound
property.
traveling.
So Jason, what is there now? Do they have a fence now?
I think there's a chain link.
There's a chain
just a
link
chain-
fence that runs along the south side.
And it's
of
6
the-
feet?
Most likely.
Yeah, I think it's a 6 foot fence, chain link fence.
So I think a masonry 7 foot fence would definitely be a deterrent unless they climb the trees, but is it? Can you show the picture?
I guess that doesn't matter. I don't have a picture of that side.
Yeah, I don't think we have a.
You can see the fence along 4th, which is 6 foot chain link.
So you can't really see.
Yeah, I can't really see. No. Could be 7, but typically they don't make chain link. unless it's special ordered.
Taller than me. I have a question about it too. Standard.
Yeah. No, we haven't closed it.
No, so you can come up.
Yeah.
My backyard goes back up against the grocery store. And I was wondering, one, if there's going to be any windows on that side of the grocery store. 2, what the lighting is going to be like on that side of the grocery store. And then the third would be the fence. And I would like to, if we could do better than 7 feet, that would be great. Thank you.
Could you answer those questions?
There's no intention to have any windows. There's no need to have any windows on the south side of the grocery store. The fence is still under discussion, and any lights that would be along the south side of the grocery store would be security type lights that again would be shining down along the sidewalk and the truck access route there, not shining out across the fence and into the neighbors' homes.
So as part of the site plan process, which is not tonight, we would require a lighting plan that shows the illumination of the light fixtures and how far they illuminate out. So that would be part of our review when it goes to planning commission for the site plan. At that point, we would know if there's glare or other light bleeding off into the neighbors, and would require them to either fix it so it doesn't do that, or they shield the light so it doesn't have a direct glare.
Have you seen any studies or anything on this 7 versus 9, 7, 8, 9 foot fences? And then a follow-up to that is
No.
just,
Typically,
will that affect the trees at all as far as the height of the fence?
it's going to affect the shade on the neighbors' properties, right? The taller the fence, the more shade it's going to
But
create.
how about as far as the trees just growing or whatever?
The intent would be when we plant trees in there, they will be mature enough, tall enough to where their leaf structure would be above the level of the fence. So that, no, it shouldn't have any impact on them whatsoever.
The 12
I
foot
mean,
plan.
even if we go higher, like 9 foot.
9 foot would be pushing it. We'd have to put in some taller trees, some more mature trees. If we go much higher than that, then we'll have to go back and take a look.
Well, there's a lot of border wall they vacated that we could move up there.
So Jason, isn't it in a residential neighborhood, isn't it 6 foot is the
You can go up
standard?
to 7, but yeah, 6 is the typical.
So maybe if we push this back to the planning commission, we can go and check, and because if the fence is 6 feet and it's been there for how many years, I don't think that would be an issue. So if it's a masonry fence, but
He
we
was
can see-
saying that it's taller than him,
but we,
but we can verify it.
because it couldn't be more than 7.
I don't know. It could be, but my guess is probably not more than 7.
The-
But I don't know.
We talk about the chain link fence that's there right now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've ran the tractor next to it many times. I just never really looked at it that close.
Do we have any other comments, questions from the public?
Hey, as you were talking about Harmons, I live over by Harmons, and so I'm looking at this map, and my question is, I was just asking Mike, if I lived in this neighborhood, which my girlfriend does, and I want to go to that grocery store, how do I then turn left and get back into my neighborhood without going around the railroad track? Just because Geneva traffic is supposed to just get bigger according to everybody's reports. So is there a way to make it so it's safe to turn left out of this parking lot? Because if it's going to be that busy, and Geneva Road's already that busy, that was my
Can you
comment.
go back to that? The first map that shows the overhead view right there.
That one?
If I may, the single point access that we have here is wide enough, and we coordinated this with UDOT and the city traffic engineer in our meetings. There are 2 lanes, and it's kind of hard to see in there. I don't know if you can zoom in on that, but there are 2 lanes going in and 2 lanes going out, and they're both set up so that if you're traveling north on Geneva Road, you can do a right-hand turn into it, and if you're traveling south on Geneva Road, you do a left-hand turn in, and same for going out. So if you're coming out of that neighborhood, right-hand turn onto to Geneva Road, and then right turn into the parking lot shopping center. And then coming out of the shopping center, you do a left-hand turn onto Geneva Road and an immediate left-hand turn back into the neighborhood. Yes, Geneva Road is busy. We know that. And there was much discussion and negotiation with UDOT on how we would actually configure this access point. The plan we came up with here seemed to be the best compromise of all of the other options that we looked at. The fact that we're pretty much landlocked on 3 sides with 4 south of railroad tracks in the neighborhood left us with very few options. But we do have options to get in and out onto Geneva Road and off of Geneva Road, turning in both directions. So that's what we came up with.
This one? Yeah, so you'd have to wait for, there's a light here. There's a light further down on 1000. So you'd have to wait for spacings, much like you do on State Street or any other busy road. If you're turning left, you're going to have to wait for an opening. There is a turn lane in the middle, so you could be able to turn out and wait for the traffic to merge heading southbound. So obviously it's not convenient during, busy hours, but there is an option to do that and not encumbering those that are going northbound.
Do we have any other comments from the public?
Yeah, I live up by Lakers Junior High, but I'm on this road all the time. My daughter lives in Vineyard right there. But I'm just seeing the 525 south turning south, like we're talking about, like she just said, turning left. Seems to me like if you have a grocery store there, you're going to tenfold the traffic trying to turn left. You already have the people that live there trying to turn left. You envision a light. I mean, it could create so much traffic, you'd almost have to do a light there, or it becomes, there's thousands and thousands of people in the Edgewater properties and Vineyard there coming on that. I mean, it's intense on the traffic.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering about that type of entrance there, the planning of that, what that really does to that area there and how safe it is.
Yeah. As part of this process, we had a traffic impact study performed by Horrocks Engineering, and they came up with the traffic counts for now and then 5, 10, 15, 20 years down to future. That were all included in these discussions with UDOT. The idea of a traffic signal was brought up and kicked around a little bit, and then it was firmly kicked down the road by all concerned. So yeah, that is something to be considered at this point in time, given the traffic impact study and the data that came out of that. The decision was made to not pursue that at this time. It may become relevant or more pressing in the future, but not at this time.
So people are trying to exit your parking lot now and
Yeah.
turn south.
Yep,
Are there breaks in traffic? Is that how they're doing it? Because of the
there are. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Geneva Road, much like State Street or any other road in the area, has busy times and it has not so busy times. And if you're trying to get in and out of there at a busy time, you're going to wait for a while, or you're just going to have to make a right-hand turn and merge with traffic and find your way to turn around somewhere else. There are other times when you can come out of that parking lot and make an immediate left-hand turn, flow south on Geneva Road, and it's really not that big a deal. But it is a garden center, not a shopping center with a grocery store and a bank and a couple fast food places. So that will obviously drive traffic up significantly. And we are aware of that, absolutely. And there are going to be times when people will just have to be patient. And that's what we're going with right now.
Do we have any other comments? Okay. Oh.
I'm Jonathan Stevens. I live immediately south. Just some various thoughts. First off, thanks for looking after us, as those that live right next to it. Just a quick bit of background. The current tenant, that lot, they have like heavy machinery driving around all the time. They have a gravel and dirt road that's right there against the back of the property lot. They drive all sorts of stuff, including semi trucks up and down. So in some degrees, having a paved road with a wall is a bit of an improvement. They also do things like have like events at night where the music is loud enough to be annoying longer than it should be. So just kind of a thing to keep in mind. I, for one, don't like noise, so I like any kind of development here that's going to help reduce the noise or any kind of other disruption. One thing that was raised earlier, and I guess this might be more of a question or a point to the developer, but it almost seems like it would be better to have one larger store instead of a large store and a bank and a fast food restaurant. And if there was still a desire for, fast food restaurants, put them inside the larger store, then everybody's noise and everybody's talking it'll be inside there, and we won't have to worry about that going over the fence or anything like that. Also, kind of nothing new here, concerns about noise, hours of operation, that sort of a thing. So nothing special there, but definitely concerns there. Trees every 30 feet, probably could even bring them a little closer to make a better privacy fence. One of my neighbors during the planning commission meeting did raise a concern about children crossing that to be basically busy inlet there, especially as they would cross that to get to the elementary school. So something to keep in mind. And also, based on this discussion here, I almost wonder if maybe a C3 zone instead of a C2 zone might be a better appropriate thing for this lot. So some of my thoughts.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and take it back to the council.
We need a motion for this and send it back to the planning commission. Steve, is that what we're looking
So
for?
may I
Yeah,
ask-
I think with some specific things that we were trying to.
May I ask a question, Jason? So we brought up a good point. If we're looking for this, if the C3 zone is the zone that protects residents, and the place we're rezoning to a commercial zone from residential is next to residents, and he wants to put a grocery store there. Smith's is in a C3 zone. So grocery stores are allowed in a C3 zone.
Correct.
Would that be, to me, I almost feel like that might be better protections and more direction in this particular situation. If that's the intent anyway, it would fit.
Yeah. You could continue this and bring it back. We can advertise it as C3 if the applicant is okay with that. But it does get to what he wants to do in this location. Yeah.
And if the grocery store, does the grocery store have to fit in that area if it spills,
No, but spill over into the C2, but
and that's okay.
yeah.
That would be kind of my thought of,
So
to ensure protections, but
what would be, but we could get there the same if we go down on this other path too, right?
It would avoid going back to planning commission and just coming next meeting to the council.
That's why I wonder what would be the quickest path to get to where we're trying to get
Going
to.
back to the planning commission and coming back would be a little bit longer. But that way you do the development agreement in zone Z2, or you could do a C3, sounds like would be an appropriate zone, and we can just do that. Next
And
planning.
would that work for you, sir, if we went to C3 as far as you know?
I guess I'm unsure of what the difference would be for us if this was a C3. Would C3 change anything with what we are planning to do with this
It
plan?
would not.
It would
Jason,
not.
you said it would not,
Would not.
but we can't do that tonight because this was advertised as a C2, is that correct?
That's correct.
If we were doing the C3, would we need the development agreement, or is that, that's just taken care
And
of?
then could we
Unless you want
just-
to do something different with a fence or things like that.
and then how would that need to be just renoticed to our next city council meeting, or still planning commission, city council?
So, I guess I'd defer to Steve, but I think we could just bring it back, noticing everybody again through the public process as a C3 versus a C2 zone. Steve, can we have to go back to planning commission for C3, or can the council rezone it next meeting to C3?
Because that would save him a couple of weeks.
So one of the issues we're looking at is whether a grocery store is permitted in C3. And I'm looking at our SLU 5141, which is groceries and foodstuffs. All right, so we have two SLU codes and they conflict a little bit. So we're trying to, one of them is saying that a grocery store is not permitted in C3. And Ryan, what have you got there?
So Smith out of compliance?
Yeah, so
Retail trade.
Steve and Ryan, isn't Smith's across the street here?
Yeah, and I don't know if that's a legal non-conforming use possibly. But it looks like there is another SLU that might make it permitted. So we're just double checking to make sure we're okay here.
And Steve, if we did move it to
So-
C3 with an exception, if we needed it, could we do that?
Which is, in other words, non-conforming uses are allowed as long
Yeah.
as they're approved by the city council.
Right.
That's what you're
I
saying,
think.
right?
Those are the words, those are the exact words I
So-
meant to say.
So, sorry, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but we do have a little bit of a conflict between our SLU codes, but I think we probably would interpret this to mean that they are permitted in C3, even though there's a little bit of a discrepancy. But yeah, so if you wanted to go that direction, C3, then I think you could do that and the grocery store would be permitted.
I think that's the best way to assure the protections for the neighborhood and get you
It's
the
just retail.
development that you
Which
want.
doesn't
Okay.
make any sense.
So really, the only
If
impact would
Jason-
mean is that in the future, we would not be able to, or a developer would not be able to come in and raise that grocery store height up to 48 feet or whatever it was. It would stay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're fine with that. Okay. So we'll come back
So
in a
does
couple
that give
weeks.
us everything if we get on the C3 path? And then as far as the fence, do we want to stay with 7 or 8 or 9 or?
I think we're fine on
So do you think the fence is fine?
Yeah.
Because we will have the tree barrier.
And maybe in the next week or two, you could confirm everything about the C3 that you quickly
Well, yeah.
scoped out. But I don't know how we defer this, Steve. Could we just say we move to defer this to another meeting and consider a C3 zone, or is that what you're suggesting?
Well, it may be that what I'm trying to determine is if we need to start all over basically in the process, file a new application, have a neighborhood meeting, go to planning commission, and all that. So I'm thinking that probably I think we could just go back to planning commission on this and have them consider a C3 versus a C2, then give their recommendation and come back to you if that's the direction you want to go. So I think if you wanted to make a motion to that effect, you would just make a motion to refer this back to the planning commission to consider this as a possible C3 instead of a C2.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
You want to go to plan.
Yeah. I think you'll need to go back to the planning commission.
So we're back to which is the quickest?
So they're both the same.
They're both the same,
They're
so
both the
I would do
same?
the C3.
Okay, so we do the C3.
Yeah.
But I,
Because then
but
you
I
don't have a
do-
development
But I do
agreement.
think for your sake of being the person who's trying to figure out what we're doing, we like I mean, I like the project. I think it's a really good project. So it's just a matter of working the details. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, so it's just the details of protecting the neighborhood, which it sounds like you're already going to do that, but this actually kind of keeps it within approved zone.
Just when I hear starting over with another neighborhood meeting, my heart kind of stops a little bit.
You sound like you have a pretty strong heart.
So you're going to.
Steve, I think the motion then is to refer this back to the planning commission, and in the coming weeks, we figure out exactly what it is you want us to have, whether it's a C2 with an agreement or a C3. Is that correct?
So I'm not sure I understood your question. We say
I
that
think
again.
the motion for tonight is to refer this back to the planning commission.
Yeah.
And then in the meantime, what is your name, sir?
My name's Jonathan Holdaway.
In the meantime, Mr. Holdaway and Jason and you figure out what we're really trying to say to get this project in kind of like it looks.
So one of the things I just want to point out, and Ryan and I were kind of discussing it over here. I think on your map, you see the green area, which is the current R20. And that's the portion we're talking about rezoning to C2. But that other property to the north there is already C2, right?
Oh,
So the
okay.
question is, do you want to rezone that to C3? Or are you comfortable leaving that at C2 while you have the other part at C3? So that's something I don't think we've really thought about, but
Yeah, does that cause any problems crossing the stream, especially if we have one building that?
so what it means
Is on
potentially is that some uses would be permitted in one zone, the C2, and some wouldn't be permitted in C3. So you'd have different permitted uses. Probably if you're going to do a grocery store, it doesn't matter because it's permitted in both.
Okay.
But the fast food needs a C2, doesn't it?
Pardon me?
The fast food with the drive-through needs the C2 zone.
Yeah, I don't know if that's permitted in C3 or not. We can look that up real
So
quick.
I wouldn't want to do the whole thing C3.
And a bank?
In C3? Okay.
Okay, so we're back to either we just approve it or we do it, go back to C2 with the protections that we talked about.
So I guess my question is, kind of to Tom's question, do we have to specify what we want the planning commission to see? We have the two options, right? The C3 or the C2 with the development agreement? Or can we just, Tom says, can we refer it back to them and then indicate to them what we want after we've spoken with this gentleman? What he wants, it's really what he wants to move forward with.
Yeah, I think you would want to have some direction to the planning commission that you would like to have this considered as C3 or C2 with the development agreement. Essentially, you're kind of changing the proposal a little bit, right?
And your opinion, sir?
Well, I think my preference would be to keep everything the same as much as we possibly could. And if that means we go C2 across the board with the development agreement, that we limit any building on that southern parcel to a max height of 34 feet, then that would be my preference. I get a little twitchy when we start crossing streams and possibly tying hands of either ourselves or developers down the road with mixing zones. Because what we've got right now is we've got two parcels at C2 and one at R20, and that's what brought us here in the first place.
And I'm seeing the resident out there shake his head yes, so I think that's.
I think we should just change it all C3, make it one property.
Hey, Jason, I have a question. So if it's a C2, what is the setback from the fence if they went 48 feet? How far would it have to be in?
48 feet.
So just 40, so it's the way it is now?
No, it's equal to the height.
It's 34.
So they've got it at,
They have a stepped height.
so right now they got 34 feet. If they wanted to push it as close to the neighbors as they
But
could, they
from
would
the
have to
fence,
maintain
it's
34.
what, 48 feet?
But right now, you're looking at
48
48.5
now.
feet. Yep,
So it would stay that way, but they could go 48 feet.
they could.
So I say we go back to C2 with the development agreement and go down that path.
So
So somebody want to make a motion to that?
can I just make a comment on that?
Are you going to change it?
I'm sorry. Just something for you to consider. Sometimes when people own or develop or buy property, it's more obvious to them what the restrictions or limitations they can do on the property when it's there in a zoning classification as opposed to a development agreement. We've had a recent example where a property owner bought some property that was subject to a development agreement, and they should have seen it, but they didn't. And so they bought the property thinking they could do something that they actually couldn't. Whereas if that had been the zoning, they probably would have known, and it would have been a little bit less messy process. So in some ways, I think it's cleaner. And I think as far as giving future owners notice of what they can and can't do with the property, it's probably better to do it by zoning than development agreement. Although either option I think is okay, but there's that
But
consideration.
we don't want to have to change that front piece.
Yeah.
I say, you know, well, I just say we do it, and that person should do that due diligence if they're going to buy that property.
No, I think you are, David.
What do you want to do, Mr. Motion? Give it to us.
I'd like to make a motion, Mayor,
Thank you.
that the city council amend Article 22-5-3A and the zoning map of the city of Orem by rezoning the property located generally at 515 or 519 South Geneva Road from the R20 zone to the C2 zone, approximately 3.49 acres.
Second.
So you're not putting any protections in there for the residents in the neighborhood?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay. Why we?
Okay, it passes.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
All right, next up, we've got item 9.2, public hearing, ordinance amending fiscal year 23-24 budget. And Brandon's going to present that.
Thank you, Mayor. As you may or may not be aware, so our new council folks, we come before you periodically as the year goes along with certain budget amendments that happen throughout the current year, as obviously we have a budget that is flexible and needs to be changed and adjusted from time to time. There are various reasons why that's done, and some of those we have here tonight. And so just for your reference, we usually come in the October timeframe, and then usually around this time, and then we will come back with a final one in June. And so those three budget amendments kind of help us make those adjustments that we are proposing to you each year as we go throughout the year. The spreadsheet that you kind of see on the screen and that was in your packet is broken into two sections. You have the revenues, as we have a budget, but revenues must equal expenses. And so there's a revenue side of this, and then there are pages of where those additional revenues that we anticipate are going to be spent. And so there's an expenditures section as well. I won't focus necessarily on the expenditure side because obviously we don't spend it unless we're going to receive it. So I just generally focus on where's the money going to be coming from. And it touches on a little bit on where that money will be spent, but not so specifically. So if you're interested in that and you happen to look through that and have questions about where it's going to be spent specifically, then feel free to ask, please. We'll start with the item. You can see the note column there. You'll see a number there. That number correlates to the notes that are part of the budget amendments. Item note number 1 which is the most common reason that we come before you with budget amendments, are grants and donations. And those happen regularly. And so there are a number of those in this particular setting. I will focus on just a couple of those, the larger ones, which you'll see right in the middle of kind of there, the grant DOJ COPS hiring program, 132,000. So we received a new grant from the COPS program to hire, I believe it's a mental health advocate, if you will, I don't want to say mental health officer. And so we have adding the funds that we expect to receive to pay for that particular position. And then you'll notice about a little ways down the screen, our Major Crimes Task Force. Each year they receive that grant's called a HIDA grant. And they receive that regularly and it's a calendar year grant. And so that's why you see us coming to you with that particular budget amendment at this time. And you can see it's a pretty hefty grant that our task force uses for the things that they are responsible for. Let's see. Trying to remember if they have, there's one more at the bottom. And those are the two major ones that for this particular budget amendment. If we go to item number 2, are there any questions about any of those grants before we proceed? Great. So item number 2, we had an opportunity. So we will be coming in June with what we call our CIP, a fund transfer from but our general fund had excess funds from our fiscal 23 year. Those funds are normally transferred in order to, number 1, meet state law requirements, but number 2, to move those funds into our capital projects fund for various projects that the city has. We had an opportunity to obtain playground equipment for the Northridge Park and get better pricing if we were able to get that taken care of right now. So we're in essence planning ahead for the transfer of those funds that we know are going to be happening. So we will obviously reduce that transfer when that time comes by this amount, but we are going ahead right now and trying to get the purchase of that playground equipment so that we can get that ball rolling and get it done at a lower pricing. Any questions about that particular budget amendment? Great. If we scroll down a little. Item number 3, note 3, our vehicle maintenance fund. We have known for some time that we've needed to replace the column jacks that our fleet maintenance folks use to, I believe that's to lift vehicles. So we've been charging our funds a little bit extra in saving the amount within the fleet maintenance fund for the future replacement of those column jacks. And this is now, the time has come and we're appropriating those funds that we've been saving to be able to pay for those column jacks. Item number 4 on there, note 4. We regularly have vehicles that need to be replaced for various reasons. This particular time happens to be an accident where the vehicle was totaled, and unfortunately, we need a vehicle for our building inspector, and we don't have a spare necessarily to provide. So our self-insurance fund, which the purpose of that is to do certain things that come as unknowns, is funding the replacement of that particular vehicle. And you'll see that happens to be in 2 particular funds because obviously the building inspectors, if we scroll up here a little bit, you'll see right here in the middle of the screen that note number 4, because that building inspector exists within that particular fund. So it's being transferred from the self-insurance fund. Those funds are being transferred into the development fees fund, which is where that vehicle will actually be purchased from, is in that particular fund for that building inspector. Now, you'll notice the 2 amounts are different because there are some funds available in that development fees fund. And so we didn't necessarily need to budget for the whole thing. And there's a piece related to that in that self-insurance fund where we are also creating a fund that exists at all times to be able to do that. So in essence, we don't have to come to you every time we need a vehicle repair or replaced. So we're hoping to build that fund up so that over a period of time as well. So that's kind of a combo type theme. Any questions with either note 3 or 4? Great. Item number 5, which is the big kahuna of this particular budget amendment. Back when we purchased the Hillcrest Park property, we used Fund 45, our CIP fund dollars to purchase a portion of the money was used to buy that property. That property was impact fee eligible for our parks impact fee. However, we did not have enough parks impact fee money at that time to be able to pay for that portion. Obviously, we have collected parks impact fees since that time, and under state law, we're able to reimburse ourselves for those funds that were spent in that capital projects fund. And so this is taking those impact fee funds that we have collected and applying them against that park and reimbursing, if you will, reimbursing the city, freeing those funds to be able to do any whatever other projects that we might stand in need of. They don't need to necessarily be impact fee projects any longer by making this transfer. Number 6 and number 7, both relatively small. Number 6 is UPS rents our parking lot down at the Public Works facility. This is recognizing that rental. We don't necessarily want to plan for that every year in our budget. And so when it does actually occur, then we come forward to you with that budget amendment. And then item number 7, the Linden Police asked our police department, since we have a victims advocate unit, if we would help service their community with those victim advocates, and we charge them a fee to be able to do so. So that's the extent of all of the budget amendments at this particular time. Any questions about any of those things I've just discussed? Fantastic. It is a public hearing. I'll turn it over to you.
Do you anticipate, what is that victims advocate fee based on?
I can't speak to it exactly, but I think if I remember what Josh said, Chief Adams said was, they calculated approximate number of people that they would be helping, the appropriate amount of time that would take, and then assigned a wage to that and gave an approximation of what that would be.
And is there a contract there? Can that fluctuate from year to year based on what we're seeing as far as usage?
That I do not know. And since Chief Adams is not here today, and I doubt Captain Spieth probably does not know.
Somebody come to a microphone and just repair it. Can you hear me okay?
So we have found that Linden frequently will request our assistance through our victims advocates, and this is a way of getting some compensation for that. And so with that agreement in place, we receive those funds yearly, and in exchange for that, our victim advocates are on an on-call basis for any kind of needs that Linden Police may have. Or in terms of domestic violence victims as well, we respond to those. And so it's just kind of a way that we can recoup some of the funds that we use for our employees going out there.
So I guess my question would be, do you evaluate that on a yearly basis? Or do we have a contract where it's that amount every year for so long, or?
It's a really good question on the contract. I don't know exactly what we have in place, if it could just be an agreement that we have with Chief Browers. But yearly at this point, I think we started that last year. So this is only the second year of doing that. So we haven't really gotten to a point where we've evaluated it yearly. We definitely keep the metrics. And so we have the stats to check to make sure that that is balancing out correctly.
I'll add, Mayor and Council, that's actually a great question. And that's actually something we've been talking as exec staff that we want to regularly look at our different agreements with other agencies on a very regular basis so that we can make sure that whatever we're charging keeps up with our rising costs, right, with inflation. So I'm glad that you're conscientious about it because we do want to and need to be more and more conscientious
Well, and
about
we
it.
just had that in a work meeting, right? That we have some additional needs there for additional staffing. So let's make sure we have those programs and those opportunities available to whoever needs them. But let's also make sure that the city is being compensated for that.
Absolutely. So I've made note and I'll continue to follow up on that then.
Okay. We'll just open this up for public hearing. We'll close the public hearing. And we'll move forward.
There should be with
It's a public hearing. So,
Okay.
I make a motion that we adopt, is that what, I make a motion that we adopt the ordinance amending fiscal year 2023, 2024 budget.
I second that.
Aye.
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 The motion's approved. Okay. Thank you, Brandon. Moving on to item 9.3. We can, if someone would like to make a motion to table, I think that's where we're going with that.
I make a motion that we table 9.3, the discussion resolution regarding status of Legislative Counsel this time.
Second.
Do you want to start?
Aye.
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 The motion's tabled. Okay. Brent, do you have any communication items?
Just a couple of quick things. Wanted to make sure you know that the application process has been open for Orem Fest. So if you want to tell your friends and associates in our local businesses, now's the time to sign up for the parade or to be in booths and that sort of thing. So go ahead and get the word out and direct them to oremfest.org for those applications. And then last week, I sent you an email inviting you to join us as staff, and we're inviting our residents to come engage in what many cities do to celebrate accomplishments and share, the exciting overarching goals we have for the future in a State of the City event. And so that'll be on March 7th, 9 to 11 a.m. in the Library Hall. And we want you to be a part of that with us. So we'll have kind of the celebratory event with a video and some speeches for the first portion of it. And that'll basically be fun in nature. And then afterwards, we'll have something of a town hall event with a little bit of Q&A from staff where we'll be talking to our staff about, the major kind of department specific goals and accomplishments as well. So we'd love to have you. We started doing this to some extent last year. We're making it a bigger deal this year. And so want to make sure that you're happily, energetically invited to join us and be a part of that. Our communications team will be getting with you if they haven't already to give you each time to do a little interview that'll be on video asking you, what are the projects or initiatives or efforts that you're most proud of, and then also what you're most looking forward to into the future. So if you can make yourself available for that as well, then we'd be able to put those into this video segment that we're doing. Any questions or comments about that? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Second. Aye.
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 We're adjourned. Thank you for coming.